Everyone, hope that you've been well in between now and the last video. Uh, like I've said before, I'm going through the chapters of the books that I found helped me a lot when I began figure drawing. Uh, this is sort of like a tutorial mixed with drawing along with me if you want to learn more about drawing the figure. And especially at this point in time, we're looking mainly at gesture, and we're taking tips when we're reading through the book by Michael Hampton, Figure Drawing, Design and Invention. The last time we left off, I think we were talking about creating the economy of line and how that helps you push your story with the figure that you're representing. Now, I think we can move on to landmarks, but I think I forgot to overlook a very important part of drawing any object for that matter, not only figures, but it's the topic of uh, foreshortening for gesture drawing. So if you don't know what foreshortening is, it's basically if you've got your shape that you're going to put down, the most important shapes in my opinion, for drawing the figure is tubes and cubes. Now, if you wanted to foreshorten, say, this tube over here and make it fall towards you, you would represent it something like this, where the hole at the top there will fall down and appear rounder. The lines on the side of this tube will converge more. They'll angle in towards each other. And if we add wrapping lines, that'll help us push the shape of this tube and its orientation. So now it appears to be falling towards us. And if we do it even further, push that even further, you could probably get something like that. And then eventually maybe a tube that appears to be lying on the floor, if that was the bottom plane there. So see how this original shape, when it's falling to or away from us, it becomes foreshortened a lot shorter than the original upright image. And as it turns facing you more, it gets even more foreshortened. Okay, so you're seeing more of this top bit as it falls down towards you, like this here. Okay? Now, if you're doing it with a cube or a box shape, you've got the front plane there, that top plane there. Well, that top plane will come towards us. The sides of that square will start to converge in. So we'll see the X, and this bottom side plane here is the other thing that we see, and we see it's becoming shorter. That means it's foreshortened and it's falling towards us. Now, how does that have anything to do with drawing the figure? It comes into effect when say, you've got the rib cage and the figure is leaning towards you. That's the hole there of the neck of the rib cage. maybe a head like that. You've got an arm on one side, armhole on the other. Let's give it some context here. So, legs. Okay. If I've got this guy raising his arm towards me and his hand is coming at me like that, and I think of his arm as a series of tubes. Okay, this is the hand. Oops. You've got that tube going over the back tube there. So if the arm, this figure's standing upright, so his tube of the arm there, tube of the lower arm and his hand. If he's raising that arm, then these tubes will appear to come towards us, and they will taper in away from us. So this is just a matter of analyzing and practicing and taking your time with analyzing the figure. Don't always have to do those quick 10-second gestures or whatever you've been doing. Spend some time taking time to analyze the figure and make sense of what you're looking at. Okay? This could have been fixed a bit more, but if it was one long tube, it'd be tapering down to the shoulder there. And if it's that arm's going, say this arm is going away, it tapers away from us also. See that conical looking shape? Okay. So that's foreshortening quickly, but maybe we'll go into it a lot deeper in the future. But for now, that's just a quick introduction to foreshortening, because we'll be using it later when we're drawing different angles of shapes and representing volumes. So we'll move on to the landmarks of the figure. This is important because it helps you identify, for me, it helps identify like a center axis of the trunk. So if I'm doing the gesture of this trunk, it would appear something like this C. And this is obviously the front of the figure. And I'm going to look for a center axis just to help me figure out which way that figure is looking, or which way the body is turning, sorry. So within this gesture, and I pushed it further towards construction, say I've got the rib cage like this, and I'll add that big bucket shape for the pelvis. Now the whole of the neck would be around here, and the rib cage, the arch called the thoracic arch, would be like that. You've got holes of the rib cage where the arm comes out of. So with Michael Hampton's book on figure drawing and landmarks, with the landmark section, we're looking at a pit of the neck, and I'll point it directly in a second. This is the sternum. We've got a belly button, and we've got these crests that sit on top of the pelvis. So they're called iliac crests. And with white, I'll point out exactly where these points are. So the pit of the neck is at the bottom below the chin. And it moves into the sternum, which is that front hard bone of your rib cage. From the sternum, it forks out, and the rib forks out, and you've got these 2 points at the bottom of the ribs, and they're called the 10th ribs. That's another landmark, 10th ribs. So one there and one there. If you continue this axis down, we'll find that these bones that protrude out of your belt line, and that's the iliac crests. If I draw through there, those are the iliac crests. And that is these are the main landmarks to look out for. I forgot the belly button. See the 10th ribs up here and the 2 iliac crests. In between that section, you'd find the area of the belly button. What Michael Hampton also adds on to the front landmark would be, I'll do it in white, the head of the humerus, which is the head of your upper arm bone. And that sits there. The bone goes down to around the elbow, and we'll go into more detail on that. But how does the rib cage connect to that humerus? The last landmark from the front would be the clavicles, and I'll put them in green. They connect, they're shaped like handlebars, as you can see here on this skeleton example. They go from the pit around the ribs, and then it connects to the top. It stays hovering above the head of the humerus. So I see the protrusion there. That's the end of the clavicle. Okay, now I was going to mention this humerus bone. I'll go to the side. Start another. So if you've got the ribs, oops. Okay. We got the rib, sternum, 10th ribs. I'll put in a pelvis. These are the iliac crests of the pubis. And they sort of line up like that with the rib cage, that 10th rib. In between, there's a belly button around there. Now, I put some holes in there to make space for the arm, the top of the arm. Okay. Now, we've got the head of the humerus and the clavicle that connects to it. And the other side, we'll put another arm there. So this is the humerus, and a bigger image would be like that, the head of the humerus up there. You've got the bone that the muscles connect to, and the bone is shaped like the end of like a mallet at the end. So I'll show you an example of what I look out for when I'm drawing the arm. Insert a photo, let's see. Okay, so we've got this example here. Just erase some of this. Okay. See the point on the elbow there? Come on. point on the elbow here. That point, if I made it really big, it's causing that elbow joint to really show strongly, and then along that would lead to the end of your ulna. So that's the elbow. And how does that work in regards to the humerus? So the humerus on this fellow here, the head of the humerus is there. The humerus is shaped, again, like at the end is shaped like a mallet. So if I'm to look at this figure, root of the bone, that's the head of the humerus, and it goes to that mallet shape on the end, and the elbow hooks around that mallet shape. And I'm exaggerating the end of that mallet shape just to show the point of how this elbow hooks around it, and it goes to the ulna. There's another, actually I'll leave that for later. I won't confuse you too much now, but Michael Hampton adds this humerus as another landmark of the front, as well as the elbow, what we just looked at now. So the humerus is one bone, and the elbow is another bone of the forearm, the ulna. Okay, so just keep that in mind. We'll do one more example of looking for landmarks at the front, and we'll move on to the back. So if we were to analyze this figure here, I think it's a Michelangelo. I think. So let's go through what we've learned so far on gesture drawing. That trunk I'm representing with that big C shape, I'm looking for the rough central axis. I'll put in some form lines. The rhythms down to the legs, and a rhythm for the arms. See how rough it is? I'm not even measuring anything. Just go by feel. And if it looks so wrong, just start again and do something that feels a bit better. But we're not measuring here. That's the whole of the rib cage, where your neck would come out from. That's the head there, and it's got a tilting away from us a little bit. So I'll represent that with those wrapping lines. Okay, so if I'm to draw on top of this, give this structure, I'll draw the egg shape of the rib cage, the sternum, and the 10th ribs. I can see it on this fellow here. I'll put them in on my gesture on the side. So I've got the pit of the neck, sternum, rib cage, the 10th rib, sorry. Now, I'm going to draw in the pelvis, which I think would be around here on the figure I'm doing, and the ends of the iliac crest that seem to look like they line up on this image here, almost like so. Now, in green, I'll try black. Pit, sternum, the 10th ribs, the iliac crest. Okay, if we push on, we find the big bulge there, of the humerus. So I'll represent that on my figure there. And we've got these, we'll have see the indent here? That's around where the clavicle will end. So I'll put that in here. Actually, I'll do it in black. And then there would be one on the other side going to the other humerus, like we can see here. Okay, we've added all the landmarks necessary. Actually, I've forgotten to put the belly button around here. Let's continue on identifying the elbow. So it's the very sharp protrusion, and that will lead straight to the small bone that comes out at the base of at the wrist on the pinky side. So if I pull that out here, I'll be drawing the elbow protrusion to the ulnar head, the end of the ulnar maybe. And how do I conceive this hooking on to the humerus? It appears to be going on like this. So that's the head of the humerus going to the mallet shape. And we've got our bell bone moving to that ulnar point. So that's that's how the landmarks of the front, you can identify them from analyze them on yourself and then look at the figure and try to picture where would it be in relation to where I find it on myself. One more, perhaps, just a quick one, just to drill home the point. This one, okay, we'll have to see through his front arm, but we'll continue with how we always do our gesture. Center line, this is going to be very quick. Form lines, I'll do a hole there for where the arm is going to come out from. Legs. Hope you've been practicing a lot of gesture drawing. I'm going to do it, make it a daily thing. Just do a bit of gesture every day. Keep you loose. And then the head. Well, it keeps you loose, but it also makes looking for rhythms become like a second nature. So eventually you'll be able to make these rhythms up on your own without having to look at a figure. Okay, in red, the rib cage, the pelvis, the top of the pelvis sits like that, the belt line, I'll call it. Mine's going the other way, so fix it up like that. Center line. In between the top egg and the bottom half egg there, I'll put the belly button, which is around here on the figure there, I think it's Pontoma, maybe. Okay, so pit of the neck, down to the sternum, the end of the sternum. These would be the 10th ribs of that rib cage. The iliac crests, those bony protrusions that you can feel in yourself, it'd be around there. And then at the front of the pelvis, it sort of dips. And this is where the reproductive organs sit. Okay, head of the humerus, the big bulge you can see on the figure there. Elbow, look at that. going straight to there. I'll put a point around here. And remember, you're not copying exactly what the silhouette or contours of the form you're looking at. You're just using it as a reference. Now, that humerus would sit something like this, where you got the end of the mallet like that. And if I make that bigger, okay, I'll make it like that. It'd be sitting on this, the elbow would be sitting on that humerus bone, kind of like that, wrapping around that mallet head shape. Okay. So just practice that a few times with the front of the body. We'll get onto the back as well. So hopefully you've taken note for that. Some notes rather. Okay, we can see on this skeleton on the right here, our landmarks of the back. And one would be the base of the back of the skull, your spine. Along the spine, the very big bump in between the shoulder blades, the C7, base of skull, the spine, you've got these two scapular bones that sit like wings on the top of your rib cage, and they're shaped like these Doritos. They connect to the front clavicles. So you've got your clavicles here, and if we were to go through, they'd connect to those scapulars at the back, like the shoulder girdle. So that would be clavicles, that would be scapula, if we're sort of looking down at it. And they would connect around here, called an AC joint, I believe. So that is the scapula, and then the clavicle at the front, and then a humerus that comes out, the humerus bone. And you see this shape's like a shoulder girdle, like the shoulder pads that they wear in the NFL, gridiron. Okay, to continue on the back landmarks, we've gone down the spine, the scapulars. We've got the sacrum here, which sits in between these crests of the pelvis. So on this figure here, base, skull, C7, base of skull, you can see the shape of that, the muscles and the protrusion of that shoulder blade. Continuing down, we find this iliac crests, and in between is the sacrum. So, okay, you've got base, C7, scapulae for plural, spine, pelvic crests, and the sacrum. So hopefully you jot that down and keep those notes, these landmarks on the side when you practice, trying to identify them on the figures that you're drawing. So let's look for an example to do. Hopefully this isn't really boring for you guys, but it's something that you really just have to practice and try to identify on your own whenever you're doing figure drawings online or in person. just make it a separate exercise to try and identify landmarks. Okay, so this is the back. And the back has their own landmarks, as we just saw. And I'm going to try and interpret this figure gesturally. It's going like that. Legs coming out, another leg there, one arm going up, and this one going down. Now, the landmarks I'll put in white in pink, this pink color. I can't see that. I'll try white. Okay, there. Base of the skull, the C7 joint, the spine, and the sacrum just sits just above where your butt crease begins. From that, let's look at this humerus, that head of the humerus, a really big protrusion there. The scapula is going to connect to that. Well, it'll direct the spine of the scapula will go towards that humerus. And this is what happens when your arm goes up. The scapula's pivot point is here, and it's turning upwards. So here it's not moving up, so it's at rest. The spine of the scapula is connecting to the humerus there, and you've got it at rest like this, and there's your Dorito shape. But, like I just mentioned, here's the scapula on this, and it's resting. But if the arm goes up, the pivot point would be here on that side, and here it's going up towards that humerus bone. So if that's going up, this also has to turn up also. It's not going to stay like this. It doesn't extend. The bone doesn't extend. It has to move because it's a rigid bone. So it moves up like that. Base of the skull, C7, following the spine to the pelvis, and the ridges of the pelvis is another landmark to look out for. You've got it coming around like that. So just get used to that. We'll see if we can do actually, we'll move on to the next section, but I'll write these down for you again. Base of the skull, C7, scapula, humerus, the humerus head, sacrum, and these crests, or that belt line that you should be able to see it through, just drawing through the figure. Okay. Moving on, we'll get on to how you represent the rib cage and the pelvis. I think we may have talked a bit on this last time, but if we're constructing, say, the figure that we're already looking at, you've got the rib cage, and what I like is the half circle again for the pelvis. You got the spine connecting them. Now, if you can represent it like that, fair enough. I want you to also challenge yourself and see if you can represent this egg as a sort of cube shape. So how am I going to find it on here? I feel the cube, if I represented it here, would appear like so. Why do I think the cube is appearing upwards? Because if I were to do this pose myself, I would feel, it feels like I'm bending back a slight bit. So if the front is facing upwards and I draw a wrap line around this cube, then if I use the spine to wrap around that cube, it would feel like that to me. And then you've got the head and it's angled down here. Okay, and same for pelvis. I represented it up here, and the sacrum would be like that. But if I want to challenge myself, and I want you guys to challenge yourselves, is how would you represent this as a cube? I'd represent it like so. And you can always follow these crests of the pubis, or the pubic bone, and then draw through it like that. And get into the habit of simplifying the figure into these shapes. One reason for doing the shapes like this is it helps you understand the plane or the side that you're looking at if you ever wanted to draw a shadow. So, and if you wanted to simplify it as the cube, that's how it looks. And it appears the back is in a shadow, and you can just push that there like that. The head here, if it was a cube, it appears to be looking down, and it would be like this. So get into the habit or into a practice of representing the head, the rib cage, and the pelvis as boxy shapes, egg shapes and boxy shapes. Okay, now, oh yeah, and whenever you're doing these boxy shapes, always try and look for the center line of the shape that you're drawing. So that's another habit to get into. So with this one, there's your rib cage, your pelvis, sacrum, and what was I saying? Get in the habit of finding the center line. So that's the base of the skull there, and it's going around like this. Base of skull, C7, spine, sacrum. And what were we doing? Oh yeah, always look for the center line. So using those landmarks, that helps you find the center line of this, the back there, which is pretty much the flow of the spine. Okay, the next thing we'll get on to is just re-emphasizing the volume of these shapes, the trunk. Remember your wrap lines, and that'll help emphasize the form also. Now, the thing Michael gets into heavily towards the end of that chapter, in the landmark section, is to practice drawing that part that I keep telling you that's so important, is to keep drawing the trunk. Now, I've got the example up on the computer screen. So he says, just to, like, what I've just been showing you now is practicing and practicing as much as you can. I'm going to focus on the middle figure here. The gesture. And I'm doing that C shape to represent. It's coming up there. Oh, and it continues here, so I'll modify it a bit. I can see the top plane of his shoulders. Now, let's spend some time representing this as an egg shape, the egg shape for the trunk. And where is the center line? When you get to the abdomen, you can be a bit tubby, or you can just flow in and out, just to show the contour of where it connects from the ribs to the pelvis. The belt line would be around there. The 10th ribs. Now I'm going to connect. He likes you to get into the habit of connecting the 10th ribs. I think he does. Yeah, there's parts where I think I may have learned this from someone else, but get into the habit of connecting the back portion of the iliac, of the crests, of the pubis, to the rib cage. So I've got the connection there, there. Another example, the lady next to him, or an angel. I'll do this gestural shape first with form lines, and now I'm going to convert it to, this artist seems to like the boxy shape, so her top of the rib cage, if I was to represent it as a square, and the square doesn't have to be rigid like that. You can give it some bend just to push the gesture and flow of the figure and make it not look so stiff. Now the head is laying that way. Now the pelvis as a boxy shape. So if I went down the front, this would be the center line of the front. I can move on and look for the 10th ribs. The 10th ribs on this is around there. It makes a really distinct angle change. On this figure, you can see it here. It's the angle change, or the tilt from the top to the bottom of the trunk. I think I made a mistake in that top one. I think looking at the angle of that, the 10th ribs, I made a mistake. I think the rib cage, and I can barely see the side of it, but it looks like I'll push us seeing the top plane of the ribs, and then I'm looking at this square shape here. That's the top of the iliac crest, and it's going away from us. So if I connected these sections, it would appear like so. And if I continue, what is with there, it's got the knee and another leg going up that way. A head. And then an arm. And that's a good example of a foreshortened arm. So if you look, I'm using the mouse over that arm there. I do, the hand is roughly here. I do a shape of the forearm, and then I do another tube going back for the figure's upper arm. If it was down, if that arm was hanging down, it would appear a lot longer. But this is what happens when you get foreshortening, when the limb is sort of going towards you or even away from you, the shape shortens. That's long. This is short, foreshortened. Okay, I can continue on with more of that, but it's just a matter of practicing it on your own, looking at references, and then trying to find a egg shape for the, and the half circle shape for the, when I mean half circle, that I'll keep saying half circle, but like the bowl shape of the pelvis, egg shape of the ribs, and then move on to changing the shape from an oval or egg to a box. So this I'd probably represent like that. And of course, you notice that the rib cage is a lot longer. The pelvis looks more like a shoebox. And looking for these center lines. Okay. Now what you'll notice, the further the center line is to the left here, then you'll see more of the right side plane, and the opposite here. So if you've got the center line going towards the right, you'll see more of the side plane of the left. Just little things to remember. And I keep saying, go back to this video and go over it again and again. And little points like this that you might forget later, you'll pick it up next time, and you'll start realizing it when you do your own figure drawings. And we've gotten into, let's go quickly into weight distribution, or pinching and stretching. I think is the more important thing, is like pinch and stretch side. We went into it briefly in our last videos, but I'll go into it again. This fellow here, the middle guy, the gesture, remember? I'll represent it as a C. This, his top half is closer than his bottom half. So if I represented that concept with this bean shape, you see how I've got this section here, and if I zoom in, it looks like a T. Now, this is important for the language of it's like a communicative sign, this little T shape. That T shape's important because it helps you see this top section is closer to us than this bottom section. Okay. On this subject here at the top, you see this bit going into the pelvis, into the abdomen area. Now, if I draw that as a abstract shape like this, that bit here, I can go in a bit closer. This bit here is in front of the bottom bit there. So that overlap, that shape there, helps communicate to the viewer that this section is closer to us than this bottom area here. So always be aware of that overlap shape. That's the also called, what I called the active side last time. on the passive side. You've got the active side here and the passive side. And you can see it a lot on limbs. See this kid, I think he's holding up. I'll get rid of this. Okay. Fresh. Now the kid, quickly, his back seems to be closer. This top rib section seems to be closer than his, let me see now, his pelvis, which is there. So that T intersection would be like that. That would make it appear that this top section, which I believe he is closer to us, and then this bottom trunk section of his. Okay, and then the example I was going to show was the arm. The limbs happens a lot in the limbs. So the tube of the, I'll just gesturally put in his arm there. And in black, this is where the overlap is. The back, this upper arm of his is closer to us than the forearm. So there's that T there, subtly. I'll put it there subtly. And you'll see it moves into there. So this section appears closer to us because of this little communicative thing that we've put on there. And the forearm is further from us. So that's a little thing he emphasizes towards the end of that chapter there. These little T shapes, just to emphasize parts, structures, volumes that are in front of other volumes or behind. Here's a subtle one. I'm trying to emphasize that this tube here is closer to us than this lower section. So I had put that, I put that T section there as a kind of visual cue to tell you that, all right, this is closer to us than this. Okay? So that's pretty much it for today's lesson. What we've went through quickly were the landmarks of the front and the back. We've gone into representing the trunk with egg shapes or with cube shapes. Finding their center lines is important. And if we're doing, of course, we'll have the bottom sections, the pelvis. How would you connect the top to the bottom section? So we talked before, the front, you can find your 10th ribs and connect them to the crest of the pelvis. On the back, you can connect those two. See if that's the back there. We've got the sacrum down here. Just put what you think looks best when you connect that top cube to the bottom cube, which will be the top parts of the crest, the pubic crest. Also, identify the passive side, and the other side should be active. What we're looking for is asymmetry in figure drawing, just to give more interest to the viewer, and make the shape look a lot more dynamic, which is not as boring as something so symmetrical and static. We're looking for the T shapes also. I've done it here. So that's quite a lot to think about and go over. My advice would be hammering out gestures all the time, and then having a list of your landmarks to look out for, and then pointing that down the figure from the rib cage to the pelvis. Point out where those landmarks are, convert those egg shapes or the gestures into cubic shapes. Just play around, and hopefully you'll do it so many times that you won't need a list of the landmarks to check off. You'll just know where they are. Next time we'll get into his next chapter, which gets into the anatomy or the bone structure of the arms and the legs. And that kind of moves us into a little bit about anatomy, but we'll leave that for next time. In the meantime, go through the landmarks, convert trunk to the simple shapes, use overlapping, identify the passive and the active side, and just keep on practicing. The best images to practice from are, for me, always these old Renaissance style of photos. And until next time, take care and don't let yourself get too frustrated. These things always take time. The best things to learn always takes time. So see you next time and keep practicing.